Happy Saturday, everybody. I am going to find... Hi, Charlotte. So I'm super excited for today's live stream collab. Hi. Oh,
Hi.
where my filming is.
Ooh,
I
I'm
did
really
it at this
close.
time. Okay. Hi, how are
I'm
you?
really well. How are you? I just feel like I'm really close.
Yeah,
I'm gonna come back a bit. There we go. I was
Asian
like, whoa.
on a collab. Where are you from?
So obviously UK. I live about half an hour from Sherwood Forest, so near Robin Hood.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so I'm in the US. I'm on the East Coast, so not
Yeah.
too far. But I'm really excited to chat with you. It's 9 a.m. my time. My partner's getting me a coffee right now, so he might
Nice.
deliver it, which is awesome. But I noticed that you love working with human design with your clients, and you're all about, just owning yourself and falling in love with yourself, trusting yourself. And I would love to dive into that. I have studied human design and I use it loosely with my clients, but I haven't gone all in. I haven't taken a course or anything in it. So I think it's fascinating and it really opened up my eyes. But before we dig into that, I want to hear your story. If you want to tell everyone like who you are, what got you into business, your biggest breakthrough or whatever. I'm sure everyone would love to hear it.
Amazing. I'll give you the short version
Okay.
because it's long. Okay, so the short version was I'm 45, I'm a wife, I've got two boys, just about to turn 17, just about to turn 11. I moved to London when I was 19, worked there in corporate for 10 years, went to a party basically, and came out of that party 10 years later. I worked in television and all the things and I met a partner and we bought a house and all that. And then I left him 6 months after I had my little boy, moved back home to my parents. I was 30. I left my home, my job, my friends, my life, everything. And I was sort of found myself back at home with my parents at 30 with a 6-month-old baby, no job, no nothing. My life in 13 bin liners and retrained as a hairdresser, did that for 5 years, got to 35, had a early midlife crisis and just was like, this cannot be it. Like, this can't be it. And I started a business then about 2012. It was a network marketing business. I did really well in that. So I left hairdressing, had my second son. And that business got me into personal development and personal growth. And I started following sort of the big names. And I was just like, I want to do that. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do that. And I genuinely think that as much as I loved that, what drove me to be successful in that. I mean, at one point, my business was turning over 1.5 million, so it was doing really, really well. I mean, I wasn't earning that much, obviously, but I was turning over a lot, big team. And I read a book called The Four Agreements. I don't know if you've read it, Don Miguel, yeah. And one of the agreements says, you shouldn't take anything personally, good or bad. And I was like, I got the bad one, but the good one, I was like, I don't really get it. And it was like, you shouldn't, it's great to get compliments and it's great to be validated, but you shouldn't need it to feel validated in yourself. And I realized that my success has been completely driven by the outside validation, by the pat on the back, by the you're doing an amazing job, like you're so good at this, because I was trying to prove to myself and everybody else around me that I wasn't I'll not swear, I wasn't the F up that everybody, that I thought I was. And so that happened. And literally overnight, my passion for that business just sort of dropped off the face of a cliff. And I just got into personal development more and more. And then somebody just said to me one day, you should coach like outside of this. Because I was coaching obviously and I was asked to speak on all the stages. And I was always asked to speak about personal growth. It was never about the business, really. It was about how do you get better in order to be better. So that sort of planted that seed and it just went from there. And so I retrained as a coach in 2017 and I've been coaching ever since. And that business it took 18 months to extract myself, which was pretty painful from that business. And I've been coaching ever since. And that's sort of where I'm at. And that's been a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And continues to be it. So that's sort of what's got me here today.
Wow. What an incredible story. And I love your emphasis on realizing that you were relying on external validation because I keep seeing come up over and over again with myself and with my clients. I think it's natural for a lot of entrepreneurs to see the numbers and associate some kind of story with
Yeah.
it, or see, the lack of numbers and associate something with it. Honestly, the biggest growth shifts that I've had in my business has been when you detach from that. You
Yeah.
find the validity in yourself and not based on the external results. And it's so hard to do. So I'd love to hear if human design at all, and like what's your experience with design?
So I'm not a naturally I'm quite a natural skeptic. I'm not somebody who just believes. My spiritual journey started about 13 years ago when my mum saw Jesus in a toilet. It's a story for another time.
That's
Um,
a
it's too long a story to tell, but she literally had a vision in a toilet, and turned into a Christian because of that. Now, I'm not a religious person in any way, shape, or form, but my spiritual belief started then because my mum's a very pragmatic, very stoic sort of like woman. She's not somebody that makes that kind of stuff up. So I believed her. So I was like, okay, so there's something in this, and that sort of started that journey. But over that journey, I've dipped my toe in a lot of methodologies and a lot of beliefs, and just sort of taken what worked for me and left the rest. So human design came to me about 7 years ago, and I thought, this can't be right. Like, what is this about? But something in me kept pulling me back to it. So I did a couple of courses as a client. I bought the books, started to read it, I put them down, and it just kept pulling me back and pulling me back. And it's been a very experimental what's the word I'm looking for? Experiential. That I've come to it that way. It's not been about, oh yeah, I just believe that. It's been like, oh, I'll try this on. And that's what I love about human design. It's an experiment. It's not, you can't just know it. It's not enough to know what a generator is or what a manifesting generator is. You've got to be it in order to believe it. And when I started to just play with what it meant for me to be an emotional generator, like I started to play with that, things started to move. So I was like, oh, this feels better. So there must be something in it. Long story short, ended up doing a mastermind last year, which took me deep into my design. So I went into it as a client so I could understand myself fully. And it was like 7 months of just studying my own human design so I could fully align with it. And then she was like, I'm doing a certification. Are you in? I was like, yes, I'm in. And I'm actually now a support coach on that certification this year. So it's been like a 7-year journey that's brought me to that. But it's really one piece of what I do, because for me, what I know for sure, right, is that it's 80-20. It's an 80% an inside job, success. And I've called myself loads of different things over the time. I was just a life coach when I started. Like, it turned into success coach, which I still sort of play around with. But ultimately, what I've realized through my own experience, and everything has come through my own experience, is that this internal game of mind, emotions, energetics, action is the thing that makes you successful. You can be given the best bloody blueprint on the planet.
Yeah.
You could be given it by a 20-figure mentor, and you could give it you for free. And if you haven't got your internal game nailed, it's like it's not worth the paper it's written on. So it became this understanding that. So I also use positive intelligence. So I was studying two things at the same time. So positive intelligence is a very science-based.
I haven't heard.
Okay, so you've got your IQ, you've got your EQ, which is your emotional intelligence, and PQ. So it's Harvard research, 500,000 people over 94 different countries. A guy called Shazad Shemaine who developed it. It's an operating system. So basically, they took all these people and they identified 10 saboteurs that we all have in our brain. And so they've given them names. So my top three are, so judge is always number one, obvs. And then my top three are pleaser, hyperachiever, and avoider. So there's 10 of them. And everybody has these 10 voices. They just have them in varying degrees and in different orders, depending on their childhood. So it all has an original survival function. So they're the saboteurs that our brain developed in order to keep us safe based on how we were raised, our conditioning, all the things. So once you've identified the 10 saboteurs, you're able to they become something separate from you. So your thoughts become this thing you get to witness rather than something that you believe. And so the mindset piece for me, thank you for bringing her coffee. The mindset piece for me, because I don't believe in just talking it. We can sit and philosophize all we like. How do we actually change our mind? Literally, not just, oh, I thought this one day and now I'm thinking this consciously. How do we unconsciously change our mind? So my original training was in NLP, timeline therapy, which I still use sporadically, like it's part of my toolkit. But really, this operating system, and this is an app-driven thing, so they call it mental fitness. So it's like, how do I flex the muscle of my positive brain? So you've got your saboteurs on one side, which is that they live on the left side of your brain, and then your sage perspective, your sage brain, which is on the right, which is responsible for big picture thinking, positivity, being able to see between the lines, like all that. How do we build that muscle? So when we have a thought, how do we change the trajectory of where we normally go? So for me, it starts with that, identifying somebody's saboteurs, giving them a voice, giving them a name. So I've got like Judge Him at Judge Face as my judge. So it becomes this thing that I get to witness rather than the truth of who I am. And then human design comes in as the energetics behind that. So where does my conditioning lay in my human design? So what I realized, because I was studying them both at the same time, and this happened by complete accident, is I recognized that the voices, our saboteurs, live in our conditioning in our human design.
Yeah.
So if you've got a disempowered ego, for example, if you've got an open, for those that don't know,
Oh, your sound.
If you've got a disempowered or an open ego or an undefined ego, it means it's white on your chart. If you've got disempowerment there, then your judge is going to show up really powerfully. Your hyperachiever is going to show up really powerfully. So it's like I got to look at someone's saboteur results. I also get to look at someone's chart, and I can tell them where their conditioning is more likely to be. And then they go, oh my God, yeah, I do think that, I do feel that. So then the alchemy, the human design alchemy, which is another process, comes into how do we alchemize actually in your energy and actually in your mind so you become something different. And then as a result of that, you then take action that is aligned, that is energetically correct for you, and supported by a brain that is on your side, basically. Because, no one's getting in your way apart from you. End of. And then we look at feminine, masculine energy, and, are you in your sort of queen energy or your victim energy? Like, where are you? And it basically comes down to two very simple things. Are you operating from a place of love, or are you operating from a place of fear? Choose. But the actual physical, operating system and the practice of that means that you don't have to choose consciously over time. I mean, in the PQ research, like after 6 weeks, there was change in the gray matter of people's brains.
Wow. That's so cool.
Which I love because, I've got defined head, defined ajna. I love proof. I love science. I love all that. So you show me some research that says it's still, I'm in, So bringing those two things together ultimately means that how much is your mind operating from a loving place? Because if you think about it, everything that gets in the way of somebody building a business or building a life that they love is fear. End of. It's a very simple thing. And so when we look at what's in the way, go on.
Saying doing something to try to prove themselves or prove somebody wrong or whatever, that's all operating out of fear.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, in the sense that if that's what drives you and you can use it for good, then cool. You know what I mean? None of us are perfect. We've all got stories, we've always got somebody we want to prove wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's at what cost and at what level is that the drive? It's not, like, for me, there's definitely an element of that. I'll not deny that. I've got to this point, especially as a 45-year-old woman who is still striving and more ambitious now than she's ever been. There's lots of people that look at me and go, why are you still bothered about this? Like, why are you still trying? Why don't you just go and get another job? Why can you be arsed? Like, So for me at this point in my life, you know, midlife essentially, I mean, I'm going to live till I'm 100, I've decided. Um, that I've still got loads of time left, but there's all that conditioning that comes up. So yes, of course, there's an element of my human that goes, yeah, I'm going to prove this voice wrong. So there's nothing wrong with it, but it can't be the main driver.
Yeah,
It has to come from love. It's got to be, you've got to love yourself to success. And that only comes from changing your mind, because your mind is not designed to do that.
I love that. Love yourself to success. What a good tagline.
Thank you. I'm going to write
Ready?
that down.
That's going to be your new branded jargon.
Yeah, watch this space.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And you said something earlier where you said you have to be it to believe it, something like that. And I really love that because part of so my story is I started a business. I was kind of forced into it when COVID happened. I had a side hustle before then, but I was like always looking for a way to
Yeah.
become a I really dipped my toes in further than something safe like a side hustle. And then I was forced into it. I was a social media manager and I booked out my business in 6 months, doubled my income. And I was like, what? I didn't think that was going to happen. But then I had people asking me how I did that, and my background's in teaching. So I was like, sure, I'll start teaching. And I really fell in love with that. But I was never prepared for it. Was so easy to be a done for you service provider because very straightforward selling. You're going to get these deliverables. I'm going to do these things for you. I'm going to, you're going to end up with these results. It was very concrete. But when you go into coaching, it's less concrete because you are not the person doing it for them.
Mm.
You are leading them through it, right? And then they have to take action themselves. And when I had to pivot my marketing from done for you to that, I had a okay launch, my first launch, and then the second launch completely dipped. And I went through a crisis moment of, oh my God, did I just ruin everything that I had out on high, um, spiraling out of control. I went into this moment of trying to, okay, maybe something I did was wrong. I should be more like this person or that person. And I lost my identity in the process. And what brought me out of that was stripping everything down, coming back to love and why I'm doing this, and just doing it for me and trying to just, blinders on,
Yeah.
stay, not looking at the numbers, treating everything like an experiment, seeing what happens and focusing on the next person that I'm going to help, then the next
Yeah.
person and the next person. And I dug my way out of that hole, but it was it was rough for a little bit. And that's when I started human design and everything. I realized I am a 1-3 generator. So basically I have to go through those
Yeah.
that I can teach them. And that was like the permission slip that I needed to just stop being so obsessed with perfection and
Do you have
avoiding failure.
the undefined G center?
Oh, I don't actually remember. Um, yeah, I don't know.
So the
Possibly.
one in the middle where your heart is, that one. So because if you have, then that's very much about identity.
Yeah.
I have an undefined. So one thing I had to do, and this is a really good tip if you find yourself easily influenced. So I have an undefined G center, and I had to, when I really got into human design and really started to actually put it into practice and not just know it. I went through my list of people that I followed on social media, and some of these people I'd worked with, some of these people I'd spent a lot of money with, and I love them and I still love them to this day, but I unfollowed them because I was like, it got to a point, especially with this one particular coach who I adore, and I'd spent a year with her, but I felt like every time I opened my mouth, I sounded like her and I couldn't find my own voice. So I literally had to unfollow. I think I ended up keeping 3 people that I was following, mentor kind of people. And it was the most liberating thing I could have ever done, because it was just I need to turn down the noise in order to find my own voice. And trust that that's enough, because it's so hard. I mean, I'm old enough to remember, no mobile phones and no internet. So I've had that experience of seeing the difference between what life's like before the internet and what's life like after it. And, I'm not one of these people who thinks it's the ruin of us all. I think it's the most incredible thing on the planet, especially as a business owner. But I also see the impact of that on people's self-worth and people's confidence. It's got me in the past, especially with people in my genre, in my area. to see them fly and to see, you know, and to feel like you're left behind, it's hard, and it can be really hard not to get pulled into not enoughness, which is essentially everyone's worst, you know, biggest fear is I'm not enough. And so for me, the self-love piece is the battle against that. It's the solution to that. It's just like, okay, how can I look, and also being bloody present in this day, like, oh my God, like most of us live, you know, in our past or in our future, and are completely numbed out in our day. So for me, in my journey, it's been, you know, what can I do today? How can I, you know, what can I produce today that feels good? And knowing that that is one step closer, and being grateful for what I have in the moment, and being grateful for even the really challenging moments, which sounds like really cliched, but it's true. Like, you don't learn anything from your successes, you learn everything from your failures. So, but how do you love yourself through your failure? I'm using that in the loosest sense of the word, so I don't really believe in the word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so good. Yeah, I have an app called Screens, and that's really a lot. Basically, it's kind of like iPhone, and you set up timers for your
Yeah,
apps, but then you can really hit decline.
yeah.
It's a little bit more advanced to that. It's free, so easy to use, but I basically use it just as an awareness tool. So it will track how many times you open the app.
Yeah, I think I've had that past.
Yeah, it prompts you with a screen that says, like, you can set it to whatever. I have it right now as, is this important? And then you can either like yes, and you then can set a time that you have to wait for it to unlock. So
Ah,
um, but it will tell you you've opened the screen 5 times today. You've skipped unlocking it 20 times today. And so like just that level of awareness, like I can still get into it, right? Because
yeah.
this is my job. But just level of awareness, like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I tried to tap 20 times today. That's not helpful.
And so many people, like, and you know, the biggest thing everybody says is, "Oh, I don't have time."
Yeah,
You
you do.
you triggering AF, but yes, you do.
Yeah,
We've all got the same 24 hours a day. Like, everybody has time. It's just, what are you prioritizing? How much are you getting sucked out? And this is bringing it back to our emotions and how we process them. You know, people have got, I'm defined, I'm an emotional authority, so emotions is like my jam. And I think the reason that people get so sucked into scrolling is it's emotional numbing. It's like, how do I not feel this feeling I'm feeling? And scrolling is the best, easiest way to do that, because you're sucked out of yourself into somebody else's world. And oh my God, if imagine if everybody just like gave themselves just half an hour to scroll a day. Because most people, I've got friends who have got, like, you know, loads of kids and a job, and now I just don't have time. And I'm just like, if you actually like counted how much time you spend scrolling, you'd probably find 3 hours a day, if not
yeah,
more.
yeah. I exercise. I do it with my clients sometimes. Take your entire day and you break it down into 30-minute increments, and you just write down what you've done at 30
Yeah,
increments throughout the entire day.
really,
So from the moment
really
you wake up
powerful.
to bed, okay, I brushed my teeth, then I scrolled, then I ate breakfast, and I scrolled while I was eating breakfast, and then I was doing this, and realize you have way more time than you think you do. It totally sucks you out of reality.
Yeah. And then all the practical things that come along with, like, looking after yourself. Like, so for me, I mean, I've always been somebody who likes, I'm not saying, like, I'm not like a gym bunny, but over the years I used to work in a gym, so like I've always been, it's always been part of my life, but I'm just not super consistent with it. I have a, you know, undefined ego, so willpower and consistency is not necessarily something that comes naturally to me, but I just sort of love myself through that. But I went through a body transformation after COVID, lost like 3 stone, got ripped to as, like, I had six pack and everything. Not sustainable, guys, by the way, not sustainable if you want to eat well and have fun. Anyway, but I sort of joined this new gym in January, and it's amazing. It's owned by the guys just won Mr. Universe. Amazing facility, and I just not gone for a couple of months. No other reason apart from the fact that I just got sucked into not looking after myself, because I was like, oh, I've got to be, I haven't got time, I've got time. Then I was like, walk your walk, Charlotte. Like, I was like, you have got time. Like, and just soon as I made that decision, I was back, you know, putting myself first. And that's essentially, you know, I always say, like, I am my first experiment. Like, I'm always my first client. So that's one of the things I think is one of my superpowers, is that I'm never on the ivory tower. I'm never on the pedestal. I'm like, I'm in this with you. Like we're doing this together. Like we're all human doing the best with the tools that we have. And my job is just to up your game on your tools, while at the same time making sure I'm doing the same, you know? So yeah, it's interesting. But ultimately for me, the focus on the external is the issue with most people, I think.
Mm. One reframe that I love is saying, "Oh, I don't have time for that. It's not my
It's
priority."
not my
Right?
priority.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I just heard Stephen Bartlett say that yesterday. I was
Oh,
watching a Diary of a CEO podcast, and he was talking about that, and it's because it's true. It's true. People say I haven't got time to build a business, or I haven't got time. Like, what's your priority? Like, what? Because sometimes things are gonna you're gonna have to sacrifice other things. Like, I'm working. It's Saturday because
right.
I've got a goal to do. I've got something I'm working on. I happen to love what I do. So today was like, I'm not going for the dog walk because this is my priority today. It won't be my priority tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? But
Right.
it's just I think you can't. I think a lot of people come into the online space or working for themselves or entrepreneurship with a sort of employee mindset, and you've
Yeah.
got to have, you know, an entrepreneurial mindset is very different to an employee mindset. You know, we don't get paid by the hour. Well, you know, I was the best thing I ever heard on that. The best quote was like, entrepreneurship's like you could put 1,000 hours in and get paid nothing, and then you'll put an hour in and get paid for 1,000 hours.
Yeah.
Which I love.
So
So good.
yeah, you have to be okay with working those thousands of hours with nothing in return because you know it's coming. You have to
Yeah.
believe it.
Yeah. And I think with that comes an air, like sometimes, I don't know if anyone will resonate with this, but like sometimes, you know, in a darker moment, I'll go to myself, am I just like deluded? Am I deluded? And then I'm like, I think you have to have like an element of delusion to you
Yeah.
in order to cope with the mindset, you know, not, you know, roller coaster that this, you know, that working for yourself creates. Like you've got to have an area of delusion, I think.
For sure. You're just to go to a job, even if it's soul sucking, like it's predictable, you have your hours, people are telling you what to do, you
Yeah.
get time. Maybe you lose your job, but it's so easy to find another one afterwards. I shouldn't say so easy, but it's hypothetically easy to find another job
Mm.
afterwards. As an entrepreneur, you are literally working for nothing at first. And there's dips and it's not predictable. You have to save for the future and yeah,
Mm.
you never but like we all stay because we love doing it because when we have that one moment with a client
Mm.
it's we're so
All worth it.
and we feel alive and we
Mm.
feel excited. I remember my previous job, I would end the day and I'd feel exhausted and I would the weekend would come around and I'd be so tired that I literally would just sleep it off and then Monday would start and I would feel guilty for not taking advantage of my weekend. And now I'm working on a Saturday because I love it and I popping on for an hour or two or three because I love doing it. After this, I'm going to feel so activated. I'm going to like have the best day ever because I love doing what I'm doing,
And you're a generator. You know, the best analogy for us generators I always use is it's like being an electric car. And on one side you've got the charging station, on the other side you've got a tree. And if you're doing something you love, you're plugged into the charging station and it's giving you energy. If you're plugged into something that you don't love and that's draining you, it's depleting your energy. It's literally that simple. So, you know, as a generator myself and as you are, you know, we're plugged into what we love, so it constantly feeds our energy. So it's almost like it was like doing something that we didn't love would be turning our power off,
mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
is not a vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
Anyway.
to recognize now what lights me up and what doesn't light me up. Because when I'm in those situations where I'm feeling drained, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Find something else to do that's going to
Mm.
recharge.
Yeah. 100%. And that's, you know, for no matter what type you are, there's that shortcut to, you know, to I always think about sort of projectors, like Gary Vee is a projector, Taylor Swift is a projector, like these
So
people
many. Yeah.
who have so much energy, but it's like they're constantly being invited. You know, for the light up for a projector is having that invitation, and like no one's getting invited more than Gary Vee or Taylor Swift. You know what I mean? So that feeds their energy, and it becomes this really efficient, beautiful energy that is just powerful. You know, there's nothing outside of it. It's just like this. And this is why it's so important to understand, like, and even if, like, I even say to people, even if you don't fully believe in it,
Mhm.
just try following your energy and what feels good. Because when people talk about, intuition and energy, even if they don't believe in sort of like the foundations of human design or where it came from or the theory of it, no one can deny that if you're doing something that feels good, it gives you energy. Like there's no arguing with it. So I tend to speak to people who are quite skeptical and just say, well, like when you have a choice to do something and there's one that feels good and there's one that doesn't, like which one are you going to choose? Well, one that feels good. There you go. Unless you are what a lot of women get caught up in this sort of martyr energy where I go, oh no, I'll do this because this is what I've got to do. And this is, nothing for Manny Gens on generators is this obligation and getting caught up in the shoulds, which is massive for women especially. I mean, it's men as well, but I think women suffer from that particularly.
Yes.
Um, so just being really, really conscious of your yeses and your nos, and learning to say no. No is a full sentence. Which is my favorite way to put that.
I'm curious for, because saying projectors are invited to things, right? And generators were to respond. So
Yeah.
what would you say, I guess, for either of types, what happens when there's nothing to respond to or to be invited to? What do you do to create
Okay,
condition
so
for
for generators and manigens, I mean, manifesting generators is essentially generator energy, so they're pretty much the same, but manigens just have that dose of manifestor, so they get to initiate as well. So for a manifesting generator, there can be some initiation, but they have this sort of, we call it a moment of truth. So you can get some options. It feels good, and they get to step into it and go, does this feel good or not? Yes or no. And if it's a no, they get to pull away. Generators don't really get to do that. We are like, if we make a yes, we're in. We're like the
yeah.
steamboat. The manifesting generation is a jet ski, right? So with projectors with invitation, so the response thing is, this is the thing with generators, right? Is we are the workhorse, right? With a battery pack, with a powerhouse. And the problem that we can succumb to is that we get nervous or we feel weird if we haven't got anything to respond to. So we get busy for busy's sake.
Mm.
Now, depending on your definition in your head, so for example, I have a defined crown or whatever you want, it's ajna or head, whatever you want to call it. There's different names, but I can get inspiration by looking at a wall. I generally get inspired by anything, anywhere. If you don't have that, you've got to be out in the world. So if you're a generator with an undefined head or an undefined ajna, you need to be out in the world in order to be inspired. So the more you get out in the world as a generator or a manifesting generator, the more you've got to respond to. So it's like it's trusting that it's not your job to initiate anything.
Mm.
So in business, it's very much like asking questions. For example, one of my best ways to get a freebie out or whatever is I'll say, if I created this, would you want it? Before I
Mm.
create it.
Yeah.
Because then if I said, yeah, wicked, and it kicks my response in and I go and do it. What I used to do before human design is I would spend hours on something and then put it out and no one would want it because it didn't come from that energetic place. So there is always something to respond to. Here's another thing that answers that question. Before I understood human design, I listen to podcasts a lot. I listen to watch YouTube a lot. I listen to audiobooks a lot. So I'm constantly listening. And I'm constantly responding to the things that inspire me out of those things. So I could be listening. I mean, at the moment, I'm reading a Course in Miracles, which is intense AF. And if I'll show you my. So this is my how much I've highlighted. I don't know if you can see that. So my colour's not very good, but there's so much in there that's highlighted because I'm like, that's a good point. I used to make that mean that I didn't have my own thoughts.
Mm.
I used to make that mean that I didn't know enough. I used to make it mean that my thirst for knowledge, and so I'm a 4-1, and so you've got a 1 in your profile
Yeah.
too. So that is, you'll constantly want to know. You'll constantly you have a thirst for knowledge constantly, and that will always be. I used to make that mean that I didn't know enough, and if I just knew this, then that would be enough. It's nothing to do with that. I just accept that I have a constant thirst for knowledge. So I intentionally listen to people that inspire me to be inspired, to give myself stuff to respond to. So if you're feeling like you've got nothing to respond to, put an audiobook on. You'll just just put stuff in your orbit that you can respond to. Like, you get to choose that. So I don't ever find myself in a position where I don't have anything to respond to. And if I do, I just get up and get out in the world and move.
Yeah,
You know.
that's definitely hard. I remember, yeah, when I was in that dip of, trying to figure things out, I was doing the busy work, like you said, very predictable. And, you can't really gain anything from trying to fix things that are not really broken. And at other accounts and for inspiration, your voice and your identity. And then as soon as I left and I went outside, nature is huge for me. So when I go on walks, I get ideas. When I'm with friends, I get ideas. As soon as you break out of that busy work, that's just for busy work, and you actually go live and be present in your life, you will find things to respond to.
Yeah.
Program right now called Main Character Messaging, where it's my philosophy that your content is about your clients, your audience, not about you necessarily. And it's so funny. We're at the movies, my partner and I were watching Dune, and they said it was a line of you're telling your story, not theirs. And I was like, this is it. And we were watching SpongeBob the other day, and something came up. I was like, this is what I'm talking about. But literally, you don't have to be doing something profound. It can be at the movie theaters. It can be an advertisement that you see.
Yeah.
So
my stuff comes in the weirdest of places.
Yeah.
I think, and this is another thing about the generator and management, is there's a difference between momentum and being busy. If you're a momentum, ride it and go for it and go for it and go for it and go for it, because there's a distinct difference between being busy for busy's sake and being in momentum. And you know the difference because the momentum feels awesome and you just feel like you can go and go and go.
Busy feels like you're going in circles.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, but I mean, I love it now. I'm constantly what's the, where's the next thing that's gonna? I mean, it could be something weird. There's some weird stuff that's happened. I mean, it's not weird because obviously it's the universe.
Yeah.
But I'll be watching. I'll turn YouTube. In fact, this morning it happened. So I was in a bit of I woke up early. We've got a puppy. He's 10 months. My husband was still asleep, and normally what I do then is I get a cup of tea and I put Diary of a CEO, and I was like, oh, what's the new, the latest podcast? And I was just flicking through them, and I was like, oh, that feels. I just felt that was the one I needed to watch, and it was a young guy who owns a fashion brand, from Manchester, and so not really relevant to anything that I'm doing, but oh my God, I was just that is exactly what I needed to hear. Exactly what I needed to hear. So I trust that, and I trust my nudges and my internal, that's the one you need to pick. That's the one you need to watch. This is the book you need to read at the moment. I mean, I've had Course in Miracles for 5 years. I've had this book for 5 years. And it's only recently that I've been no, you're ready for it. It's time. And I just trust that. And this is the thing. That's the great thing about human design is it gets you out of your head.
Totally, yeah.
Because your body knows, your intuition knows, your wisdom knows, your head doesn't most of the time. So it's this, most people just operate from here upwards. What do I think about that? What's the options? Trying to logic. I mean, we're one energies, and I've got defined head, defined ajna. So we do have a lot of logic present, but it always has to come from the feeling first.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think enough people, I mean, every time I've gone against my intuition, I've come a cropper, every time.
Yeah.
In quite a big way as well, big way, and so now I dare not follow it because if I don't, then shit tends to go wrong.
Oh, I agree with that. Every time it always circles back too. You'll say, no, this isn't my intuition, or I'm just trying to talk myself out of it or something. Don't do it, and then you'll see it come back again, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe it was my intuition.
And that decision making, what authority are you?
Oh, I can't think of what's the type.
So emotional, sacral, splenic.
Yeah.
Sacral. So like sacral authority, your decision making process is pretty instant. Like it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
and sometimes that can be so hard. Like living by your authority can be really challenging, because I always give the example of, let's say that you've got two options and one of them looks perfect on paper, and one of them, everybody around you agrees with it. Everybody's telling you, all the people you respect, all the people that you admire, all the people that you trust are telling you that's the one that you should take, but your intuition is going over here.
Mm.
And this one looks like madness. And you pick that one because, or you don't because. So the living in alignment with that is not an easy process, because you have to trust your own, you have to trust yourself. And it's very difficult to do that when you're constantly influenced by the people around you. And so that becomes a muscle that you have to build. Like, so I always say to people or clients, I'll say, start with like what you're eating at the weekend. Like somebody says, and especially, with generators, we're quite binary. So it's like, do you want this or this? Don't ask an open-ended question to a generator. Give me options and I'll tell you. So do you want Indian or Chinese? Oh, I'll have Chinese. It's an instant. So it's building that muscle of being able to trust that instant response, especially as a sacral. So I'm an emotional generator. So I have to give myself 24 hours for any major decision, because I should never make a decision when I'm high or low, because it will generally be the wrong one. So I have to wait until I'm pretty, even keeled to make a big decision, which brings its own, challenges. And everybody knows, like, I don't make an instant decision. Everyone, like, oh, Charlotte will come back to us tomorrow, or because I've got to give myself that time. So your decision making process, again, this is why human design can be so powerful, is because most of us have decision fatigue most of the time, and we can get so overwhelmed. And especially in the online space, like, God, like, you can flick through your Instagram and you've got one person telling you this, and then the next reel is somebody telling you the exact opposite. It is exhausting. And I come back to, if you understand your type and your authority, because it's the foundation of all things, if you understand that, you make the right decision for you, what's energetically correct for you, and it might not even be what seems so successful on the outside. I very much, when I first started coaching, oh my God, the amount of things I was pulled into that was sort of very masculine energy things and coaches, because I thought that's what I liked. It was absolute rubbish. But I thought at the time that's what I liked. So I was very much pulled into 7 steps to a 7-figure business. I think, brilliant, if I've got these steps, I'll just do them. And then, hey presto, here comes a 7-figure business. The naivety, I mean, bless me. And I have such empathy for her, like that version of her. Now it's just, okay, yes, I get this. And so the human design business piece, so I do something called, it's like an 8-week human design business process. And so we look at your design and build your business, everything through it. So your messaging, like, your Mercury and your human design is very much aligned with what the energy you must bring to your messaging. So when you look at that, it gives you your roadmap, not the roadmap that everybody else has got. And so you take like what you do, which is amazing. And I love the name of your program. It takes what you do, and then because that's about who it's outside of you. It's about her. It's not, or him. It's not about you. What energy do you bring to that message that makes it even more powerful and gives it a bit more punch? So it's applicable to all things. And it helps you to turn down the noise and trust yourself, and essentially love who you are, your whole self.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, every single, like, I agree with you with the strategies. You can have the best strategy in the world and it won't work unless you believe in yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, there's every strategy works essentially. Like, literally, I have clients who are still taking off on Facebook. There are people who are like, oh, Facebook is dead. There are people doing Pinterest. Like, they're in-person marketing. There's literally everything works. It just has to work for you and your audience. And you have to try not see somebody else saying something and, just fall victim to it and believe it. Trust yourself and keep going. And when you have a roadmap unique to you and unique to your audience, it doesn't matter what other people are doing. No. It really doesn't. like, that's cool, that works for them, but it doesn't work for me, and I'm going to keep doing what works for me. And that's like so liberating once you.
It is, and it also helps you to be really happy for other people.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, I mean, so my main thing is it's called the All Woman Experience, and it's basically all these different programs, it's this whole thing. And one of the programs is called Seven, and I did sort of the seven deadly sins, and I put them through personal development sort of like
Oh,
vibe. Yeah, it's really cool. And it was inspired by the book, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, which is an amazing book. It was inspired by that. And that this thing that comes up for us that I don't think enough people talk about is that when you're in this space or when you're trying to build a business, your dark side is going to come out. Your resentment, your jealousy, your envy, your old wounds are gonna come out, and you can't love yourself unless you love those parts too. And accepting that and being open and vulnerable enough to go, do you know what, when that happened, it really triggered the shit out of me, and it made me wish that, and all that, that piece for me is about. And so when you look at your conditioning in your human design, you look at your shadow, you look at where your mean girl comes from, because we've all got one in us, like, let's just be open about it. We've all got one. But when you are able to really do things through your lens and your way, and you see other people shining in doing it their way, it really helps you to be genuinely happy for other people when they're more successful than you.
yeah.
Because when I look at people like that, I'm like, she's nailed it. Like, she's being herself, and essentially that is the key to success. Is like, if you can be as authentically, or I know that's a word that's bandied about a lot, but if you can be as authentic as you can possibly be, then you can't fail, because there are a team of people. You don't need a lot of people to be really successful. I think, the coach I was talking about, she made her first million with 200, with 200 people in her client base. I like, it's when you're yourself, you can't be anybody else, and you can't compare to anybody else. But and this is something that I did, is that I came in and I tried to morph with my undefined G. I tried to morph into, I need to be more like that. I need to speak more like her. And you just end up so lost and so disconnected and so miserable that it really is that when you learn how to be yourself and learn how to love who that is, and how, what you do, how you do it, and why you do it, then it brings peace from
Totally.
noise. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you're glowing when you say that too. I
Thank you.
tell you are so in your zone, which is awesome. And I feel like this was a good way to close it out, because this is the message that you need to hear Saturday morning, or what time is it for you? Evening?
It's 10 to 3 in the afternoon.
Okay, whatever. And ending Saturday with this dose of this training. Honestly, it was so good, so enlightening. And so it was such a permission to you, just be yourself and to lean into the things that make you you, because that is how you're successful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just to add to that though, like, I won't go on for another half an hour. Like,
Okay.
just to add to that, it's like, yes, be yourself, but also improve your skill set. Like, I don't think it's just be you, who you are now, be that, but also know that if you're wanting to make an impact, you've got to lean into it and develop yourself.
Yeah. So good. Thank you so much for doing
It's a pleasure. It was really nice to chat to you.
Yes, it was so good. And hopefully we do another collab in the future, because I generators, we feed off of each other.
Absolutely. In fact, well, we'll talk about that privately, but I've got an idea.
Yeah, let's do
Amazing.
it. Yeah, awesome. So I will repost the replay and I'll tag you in it as a collaborator, and then we'll. Thank you so much for taking your time.
Have a great weekend. Bye.